Hey guys, it's Beth. Welcome to another episode of Remorselessly Biblical. I'm so glad you are with me today because we're joined by one of my good friends, Bincy. And when you guys meet Bincy and you hear her talk, right away, what you're going to hear is her calmness, her demeanor. She is such just a quieting spirit, but she's also a force of nature. And what I mean by that is she's been through quite a bit over the course of her life, as we all have been. You'll hear her share some of that with you. But she never gives up. She keeps showing up. And even when she is sort of down and out in the midst of her divorce, in the midst of just really the most difficult part of her journey, she still showed up every single day and helped raise two incredible young women and also poured into the lives of numerous women. She is the first person to tell you that she models servant leadership, because that's how God made her to be. God created her to be a servant first and foremost, and she serves. Let me tell you guys, she has such a heart for empowering other women, lifting other women up, especially insofar as it relates to financial peace and prosperity, and just really making sure that you have a sense of security. But the best part about all of this is she does it all while relinquishing control because she knows that God is in charge. So would you all just do me the great favor of welcoming my friend Bincy to the show? Okay, so hi Bincy, thank you for joining us today on Remorselessly Biblical. I'm so glad you're here.
I am too. Good to be here.
Yes. We were just talking about this, you guys. And so for all of our viewers and listeners, one of the things you all know that I love to do is when I have guests on the show, have them tell a little bit about how we met, because I am a big believer in God's providence and how he brings people through our lives at just the right time when we were once strangers and now become friends. So, Bincy, do you remember how we met?
Oh, yeah. You actually came to one of my business networking group as a guest, and I thought, oh, she's pretty cool. Dad liked to meet her. And then he came a couple more times. And at one point, I think we had a conversation, and you said something. I said we should meet. And then we ended up having coffee at, I believe, Anna's house.
Yes.
Restaurant. And that was like a couple years ago.
Yeah. Already, way pre-COVID, but yeah, it feels like forever ago, because it also feels like we've always known each other. And
yeah,
that's the best part. It's like when you find people who are like-minded, who have similar experiences, and you just connect. And I was really wowed by you as well. And I just thought, she's a hard worker. She gets stuff done. She's a heart for God. She's a heart for empowering women. I need to meet her. I need to know more about this whole woman and her journey. I needed to know you. And so, we have both been single moms throughout the course of our journey, raising very strong, independent mini-me's. So,
yeah.
So can you tell our viewers and listeners a little bit just about your story, whatever seems right to you to share? Well, obviously I want to talk for sure about the God journey, but just in general, your background.
Absolutely. So I actually became a mom at age 19. And so now I have a 23-year-old daughter. It's crazy to think this, but I feel like I did everything kind of backwards. And I really didn't have an idea of what God wanted me to do and what his direction was for me. And I don't think I listened to it at the time either, because you're 19, right? But over the course of that marriage and all the challenges I had, I realized that my life is about what I'm going to make it. It wasn't that someone's going to come rescue me. No man or a friend is going to come and rescue me. I learned pretty early on that God is the person that's going to rescue me. So I kept looking for that direction. And I worked in the computer field for 5 years and raising my daughter. She was struggling in school. I found a program for her that helped her. And I decided to leave that computer field and become a business owner. I was about 24, 25 at the time. Insane. And I had a 2-year-old as well at that time. So, it's just, you just do things. You don't think sometimes, and sometimes it becomes a successful thing, and sometimes it's not. And pursued that. It's a tutoring business. I've had it for 16 years. About 4 years ago, I decided to separate from my marriage, and it was a very, very, very difficult road. But I knew it was time, and I needed to do the right thing for myself and my children. And again, I was very afraid what God would think of me during that season of life. And I just trusted that He loves me enough to know what's good for me. And kind of became a single mom. And that journey led to looking at what the financial world looked like for me, and to be able to support my girls and their college education. During that time, I learned that I needed to be a lot stronger from my financial in my financial journey, and that led to me actually become a financial advisor. Yeah. And learned a lot about investments, and I felt like I could offer more to the world, especially because of all the experiences I've had, being a business owner, being an advisor, being a mom, single mom, all of that, is great experience to kind of share with the world. So
yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. And I
something
think
good.
Yeah, that's it. We always take sort of the messes that we go through and we turn them absolutely into motivation. I feel like, we always have a choice with how we sort of rise up from the ashes. And we always, each of us, I think, find ourselves there at one point or another along the course of our journey. I mean, nobody ever says, oh, I'm going to enter into this marriage or into this job or into this new endeavor hoping to fail. I mean, we never want, that's not the intent ever. Yeah. So I've always been encouraged by how you continue to just pick up and move on and make the most of things. But I want to unpack one of the things that you said, which I don't think I've actually ever asked you. When you said you were worried about how God thought of you during that time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you grow up in the church? Were you raised with a foundation? Okay. So what was that like for you when you were a little girl?
I grew up in the Indian Orthodox Church. So I lived in India until I was 11 years old, and I moved here around 11, 12 time period. I knew God, but I don't think I had a relationship with God. I knew that I needed to read the Bible on a regular basis and understand the rituals that happen in the church, and knew all the songs and the things that we needed to do as good Christian, right? But I lacked the relationship side of it, and my intention wasn't to leave the church for another opportunity. It was. I was in a situation where my husband is Romanian, and he went to a Romanian Orthodox church, and we didn't understand each other's language to be able to attend it regularly. So we decided that we were going to try a non-denominational church, and we started attending Calvary Church, and and eventually went to Res Life, a couple of local churches in Grand Rapids. And that's where I really started to have the relationship with God, where I understood His desires for me, and didn't feel like He was a mean God, and all the bad things that were happening in my life were because I'm mean or bad. But when I was thinking about divorce, because, of what's in the Bible, I felt very guilty. So what would God think of me? What would people think of me? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I was very disappointed. I didn't want to disappoint people in my life because of making this decision. But there was a point when I said, I think God is not going to open up all the opportunities because I'm so stressed out and burned out and hurt. I'm losing myself, and I don't think this is what God wants me to do.
It's hard, isn't it, to get to that point, because you feel like you just explained so beautifully and so true. I've been through the same situation, and I think that there's something too when we are achievers in life and we feel like we have all these things that we want to accomplish, and we look at religion from a legalistic standpoint, and we carry that into our relationship with God or lack thereof. We just think, well, if we check all the boxes and get all the straight A's and do all the work, that God will love us. And if we don't do those things, or we miss the mark, or we fail in our mind, that's what we equate it to. And so therefore it's really hard to show up in a relationship with the guilt and the shame and the label of a failure when you don't understand the other side of that, which is forgiveness and reconciliation and, all the amazing things, the other side of God that my church didn't teach me either. I only heard the message of an angry God all the time.
Yes. And that is, I think a lot of us hear that because of the tape recorder that has been playing in our heads so long, right? And releasing myself from those thoughts were really important because I needed to be present. I needed to be there for my children. I didn't want to be bitter. I didn't want to be angry. The things that happened in my life, I knew there was a reason for it, and I'm willing to move forward. But I knew that God will be the consistent source of strength for me. And I just kept relying on that. I call it God moments. I've experienced so many God moments in these past 4 years. And that's because I know that He's there guiding me through every single challenge that I'm encountering, I may encounter. So when something goes wrong, I don't necessarily get disappointed. I feel like God has something better for me. And that is the strength of that relationship now. And I'm not afraid. I say I'm afraid of car washes, but I'm not afraid of God. God has in store for me.
That's so funny. Okay, car washes and God. Yes, but it's so interesting. It's just such an unraveling that you have to go through to realize it's okay to show up authentically with God because He's no longer mad at us. He was really never mad at us. He only wants the best for us. So,
right.
Do you have any advice? I think there are a lot of women out there that struggle with these things. And I heard you say earlier too, that you learned early on that you had to be the one to sort of take charge, right? And just look out for you and the girls and kind of do all these things to succeed in life, but also just to kind of take care of yourself. So how do you reconcile that against relinquishing control and like letting God be in charge? Do you have any advice about that?
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a loaded question, isn't it? I had to kind of unpack that myself because self-care and, the goals that I had for myself, I had to set that aside during some of those years. My priority is my children. That is the absolute priority, making sure that they're okay and they're getting the help that they need, guidance that they need, and that they're connecting with all the right people for the things that they need in life. I kind of thought God is just going to take care of me. And that was kind of the path that I was taking. It's like, okay, God's got me. I'm just going to let Him handle what I need while I took care of my girls.
Yeah.
And it might not have been the right thing because, from a standpoint of just being super focused on something, but that's what I needed to do. That's what I thought I needed to do. But relying on God really helped me to be able to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I did the same thing. I mean, keeping busy is sort of a catharsis in and of itself, right? Because we have a focus. We have a focus on something other than the grief that we're also processing at the same time. And one of the things that I heard that really made a lot of sense to me is that we are able as humans to hold space for both growth and transformation as we're grieving. Like it doesn't have to be, I'm grieving, so therefore I can't get up and do anything, because in the midst of my grief, and I know yours as well, going through divorces, that our girls still needed to eat. They still needed to get to school. They still needed a motherly presence pointing them to God and to
have them have eyes on us because they're going to go through times of trial and tribulation as well in life.
Right. Yeah.
And so we were teaching them in those moments, very real time, how to lean on God and how to still have moments of joy with them as a mom, and also turn around and cry because we had great loss and we had great struggle. And we said, God, thank you for picking me up. Please don't be mad at me. But, just all these things. And that is a real relationship. And once I realized that, the vulnerability and just the uncovering, the unmasking of, I have everything together and I'm perfect, God, and I'm following these laws in the Old Testament and I'm not swearing and I'm whatever, I'm not doing all the wrong things. He sees, he knows our hearts. We read about that. And so there is no hiding. So that's actually really comforting to me, that it doesn't matter. I don't have to put on a facade for God because he's not buying it.
Right. He sees your heart and he sees your mind. But yes, those moments, I try not to show my sadness or disappointment to my kids because I want to stay strong for them. However, I had my weak moments. I had my sad moments where I would get in the car, something went wrong, and a bad text message came through, whatever it is. I'll cry in my car driving to my next appointment. And by the time the next appointment comes, I'm like, okay, life is good. Mm-hmm. And that was good for me. So keeping busy was a good thing for me. Don't really do well in my downtime even if it's just watching TV or reading a book. Like if there's this time when I'm in my head, it's not good for me.
Yes.
And a lot of women go through that, I think.
Yeah. It's a negative self-talk. It's that I should be doing more. I should, instead of I am enough. I am enough. Mm-hmm. I am enough. And so, it's like when you tell yourself something enough times, you really do start to believe it. Just like the inverse is true. And I found so many people, and I know you experience this too, have said so many negative things about us over the course of our lives that you also can start to hear that, right? The more you hear something, the more you tend to believe it.
Right. And I think women, we are very sensitive to what other people think, even if we don't want to, if we're not hearing what they're thinking, we think we know what they're thinking, right?
Yes.
Right.
We're never right. I mean, we're close maybe, but never exactly right.
Right. And so there was a point I had to say to myself, you know what? I can't worry about what other people think because they're not paying my bills. Yeah. They're not doing the hard things that I'm doing. I am not blessed with things that a lot of people are blessed with. I have to, make something out of nothing every morning. Yeah. And I say, both of my jobs are commission based. So I have to get up every morning. I don't have a paycheck coming in consistently, and I will be the first one to give up my paycheck if it comes to the point where I have to pay my employees. Mm-hmm. Those are things that I have to deal with as an individual and as a mom, as a business owner, as, a provider. Mm-hmm. And so I had to get to the point where I'm saying to myself, like, no one else is paying the bills. I have to do this.
Yes. And I love that because as I was listening to you say that, I kept in my mind going to spiritual bankruptcy. It's very similar, right? Because like you said, if I don't get up and do the work, then I have nothing to show for it. I have no monetary income. If we don't get up and spend the time with God, right? And build our spirituality and build the depth, then we become spiritually bankrupt. We've got nothing to show for that either.
Right.
We've got a void. So yeah. So that's all. I love spiritual formation, the topic of that and the process of it being a journey, because, I'm always like, let's go. If somebody gives me a goal on Monday, I want it done by Monday at noon.
Yes. And that's kind of the personality I am too.
I know, but it's so hard to take that personality and then say, okay, well, God, let's go, because he's not on our time, right? He's got, that's funny to God, probably. It's like, wait a minute. I know how to reach you and I know what I have in store for your life, the plans I have for you. We read about that. So we just have to be really faithful in that and say, okay, well, I suppose God's not going to turn me into this, whatever it is, by Friday.
Mm-hmm. Right. My friend Jennifer once said, Bincy, God's going to restore everything that you lost.
Oh, yeah.
Because she knew my journey. She was in my life for about 12, 13 years. And And that was around the time I started to talk about some of the struggles that I was having, and she was guiding me through it. She has a counseling degree, so free counseling service. But it's also a very, very faithful woman, and she relied on God, and that was powerful for me through those dark times. And moving forward, I felt the need to get connected with the Bible more. I needed to read more Christian books. And so, it was that desire that was coming on more and more. And I just knew God wanted me closer.
Mm-hmm.
And so when challenges came, there was already a consistent connection with God that I was relying on. And, I've had those questions of why me?
Yeah.
What's happening? I'm already strong. You don't need to make me stronger.
I'm good. You're like, I'm good.
But relying on him more and more as I got older was, helpful to me.
Yeah, I love the example too you just said about your friend being in your life. It goes back to I really am a firm believer that God brings people exactly at the right time into our lives when we need them the most. And we're not necessarily even looking. He just cares for us in that manner. And you said you were watching her model her very deep faith. That's what we're called to do. And I think sometimes, especially as people like us who are wired like us, we want to go out and say, I'm just going to be an apologist to this person. I'm going to go out. I'm going to be this mighty evangelist, and I'm going to turn people to Jesus in about 5 minutes because I'm just going to get this done. And because we really believe firmly in it, and we just want them to experience Jesus. But yet there's this whole thing about planting seeds, and it's not our job to water. It's our job to say, let me sow these seeds in your mind and your heart. And sometimes most of the time, it's not through words, it's through action.
Yes. And you won't see me preaching where I am way more about showing Jesus' love to people, being his hands and feet more than having an agenda of rescuing everybody. I'm going to rescue them with their heart, being able to be there for them. And, I feel like a lot of times God is speaking through me. Sometimes things come out of my mouth. I'm like, whoa, that's powerful.
Yeah.
So I believe he does guide me in those ways. And if I bring someone to Christ, because, they see Christ in me, I'm thankful. Yeah. I know my mission is to spread the gospel and all of that, but I just have a very unique way of doing it, is showing people kindness, love, and mercy and grace that God gives us every day.
Yes. And that's when I say, good job, good and faithful servant, because that you do that. I've watched you, I've witnessed you do that in people's lives in a very consistent way, intentional way. But to your point, you're not going to be out there standing on, a bench or the pulpit or standing up and just professing through preaching and words. You just come alongside people and you say, I've been there too. How can I help you at this point in your struggle? And that is the gospel. That's showing love in action. So I love that.
Right. And you know what? God put that in my heart. And you know my story. When I was about 10, 11, I lost my brother in an accident. And we were on our way to school when he was hit by a lorry. It's similar to a truck in the U.S. And he died, in front of me. And I realized that moment in my life that, first of all, there's not a lot of people will jump in and rescue you. And I learned this lesson as a 10, 11-year-old. Secondly, we have a very minute time in this world.
Yes.
And you can choose to make it a better place, or you can choose to make it a horrible place. We have that power to do a lot of damage to ourselves and to others. Seeing his death and experiencing that loss, the grief, I just chose to be better, not bitter. And I have to say that it's a thought that God put into my heart. When I experienced that, tremendous, tremendous loss. And I know so many women, so many families out there have experienced major losses.
Mm-hmm.
They can go through the why me, why did it happen? How could I have done it differently? There was a period when I was like, I could have forced my brother to stay where I was because he crossed the road that he got, hit by a truck, and I blamed myself. But I realized that there was nothing I could do. It was his time to go. So, coming to terms with those types of losses is really important in, reconnecting with God. If you've moved away from God, to help you through the grieving process is also very helpful.
Yeah.
And surrounding yourself with friends and family that supports you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. Every moment, everything that we go through in our life is defining, and it continues to shape us on our spiritual direction, our spiritual formation. And eventually, when we get to the point where we know that we experienced it for a purpose, and then we start to apply that for the benefit of others, which again is what you do, then that is really, it helps us. It's sort of bi-directional healing, because we heal from that grief, and then we're showing other people, helping them through theirs. So to me, there's no greater gospel message demonstrated in action. That's exactly what Jesus did when he was here. He helped people through the difficult times, and he said, you are worth more than this. I love you. Let's go. Keep going.
Exactly. And, one thing that I, for those who are listening, I recommend just memorizing a few Bible verses that will carry you through your difficult journeys. And for me, it's Psalms 23. I recite that before I go to bed. I recite that during the day. It just gives me, it's my meditation moment with God. So I would encourage, our Christian brothers and sisters to memorize a few verses and keep it in your heart for those challenging times.
Yes, that is excellent advice. I have a few depending on the situation. I think mine's Proverbs 10:19. I can't recite it exactly, but it basically says, zip your mouth before something nasty comes out of it. Basically, it's saying whatever pops into your head does not have to leave your lips.
Exactly.
But honestly, and I needed that very heavily at a certain period in my life. But the older I get, and the more that I receive God's grace, and I know just how much he loves everybody exactly the same, I need it less and less. And I'm very grateful for that, because I know he's with me and he's helping me with those areas of weakness, which again, used to be my mouth. And I say this all the time to people, is like, our blessings can also be our curses.
Right.
It depends how we wield them. So, I love words, and I'm like, well, if I wield them inappropriately, that's not helping anybody. So.
Right. Yep. I agree. It's definitely the truth.
Well, thank you for being here with us. I always leave my folks who are on the show with a few questions at the end, if you could answer those for us. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So, this book, Remorseless. You were a part of my journey with that. And the word remorseless means without guilt, in spite of wrongdoing. So the question is, have you ever gone through so much guilt that you were stuck, meaning that you maybe showed up as somebody that you were not, because you just were so stuck in feeling guilty and ashamed, maybe like in hiding from God, maybe like you mentioned a little bit through the divorce period. But was that the greatest time, you would say? And how did that turn into perhaps a change in your relationship with God?
I would say going through the divorce season was probably the most guiltful period of my life, because I felt I was breaking up the family, disappointing people, and then also fearful of what my life would be like as a single mother. So there was just a lot of guilt associated with that. And it really didn't subside until I started to feel whole again. And I was very broken through part of my journey because of all the things that happened. So I started to feel whole again probably about a year later, when I saw a clear direction for my life and what God is seeing in me. So yes, from a guilt standpoint, it was strong. And, there are times, even in my life now, I feel bad. Certain things went certain way. ask myself, could I have handled it differently or better? Yeah, but the past is the past.
And now that you know better, you do better. That's all we do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So question 2, how do you define God?
God is my savior, my right-hand person. He's my daddy. He's my father figure in any sense that you can think of. I have a wonderful dad, and I'm grateful to have image of God through my father too. I think that's something that many of us lack. So he is he's a good man. I love him. So the God is everything to me, and it's hard to define it in words, and I'm not really that wonderful with words. But God is my source of safety, source of calmness, peace, help,
everything. Yeah, that's amazing. I love that so much. Thank you. It is hard to sum up because people use so many different words because God is so multifaceted, so mysterious, so amazing that you also just go, that's not even the right word to use. It's just, he's so big and so all. So
right. And the faith part of it, people want to see God, feel God, touch God, but this is where the faith kind of changes your direction of life, and that trust process gets more settled.
Yes, it does. It does.
Heart, mind, and soul. So
yes, that's one of the benefits of getting older, right? You get the bifocals, and then you get the faith, strong faith,
stronger, and some wisdom to go along.
Yes, amen to that. Yeah. So, last question: what's the one authentic word that you would use to describe you today at this point on your journey?
A servant.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it's so true. You nailed that. Look at that self-awareness. Yay, Bincy. So
that's, my worldly word for me is I'm focused.
Yeah.
Really, that servanthood is, to everyone in my life in ways that I can be is what I kind of see myself as.
Servant. That's how I see you too, Mary.
Servant leader. I do have leadership qualities, but servant first.
Yes, you do. Yes. Well, thank you again so much for being here today. And viewers and listeners, you can find out more about Bincy in the show notes. I'll put everything in there. And we're just very, very blessed to have had you with us today. So thank you. Thank you for being here today. I hope you really enjoyed hearing the interview with Bincy, because one of the things that she has always done for me, and it doesn't matter if she's across a computer screen or in person, is provide a sense of calmness. She has such a calming and quieting spirit, doesn't she? She's a wealth of wisdom. She's a powerhouse. And the thing that I hope to take away more than anything is that she knows exactly who she is. She knows exactly who God created her to be, and that is a servant. She said, I'm not a preacher. I don't go out. I often don't have eloquent words. But what I do have are the giftings that God gave me, and I use them to help other people going through times of trouble. She is the hands and feet of Jesus, you guys. She is modeling the gospel in action every day. So I just encourage you to do the same with your giftings, with your skill sets, with your mind, your heart. Just love each other well. And that really is enough. You are enough. So you guys, I value your time. I thank you for, again, being here with me. I love that we are in this thing together. And I just really encourage you to keep showing up and to keep questioning and asking hard questions of one another, of God, of yourself, because we are all on a spiritual transformation path and journey straight to God. So thank you for being here, and I will see you guys next week. Peace.